Hello and welcome to this video about making a bound tassel from imagined landscapes, or maybe I should be calling it a double bound tassel. You will be using two colors of yarn. One is your main color, and then you'll need about 18 inches, 45 centimeters times 2 of your accent color. You'll need a pair of scissors, a needle, and then something to wrap the tassel around that is about 2 inches long. I'm going to be using my 3 fingers because, hooray, it turns out that I am just short of 2 inches across here, and because it's extra thick compared to cardboard, it works out. First, just cut a short length of the main color as well as your 2 longer ones of the accent color. This we will use to tie the top of the tassel. So we're going to make 20 wraps of our main color. So the tidier you make these, the tidier your tassel will be, but because of the kind of tassel we're making and because wonkiness is gnominess, that does not really matter for today. So in a normal tassel, you'd probably want to really be paying attention that you are laying every loop exactly straight in a line from one side to the other, but we're doing gnome tassels today, and so I'm not going to be super careful about that. I'm going to cut the yarn, and then using the shorter length of our main color, I am just going to bring it to the top of our tassel, making sure that that end stays below. If you'd like to use cardboard or something else, you definitely can go ahead. And with a tassel, it's usually better to go longer rather than shorter, so that you can always trim a tassel down, but you can't glue extra on. All right, so I'm going to do a double knot to tie the top of this tassel. We can now put the main color aside, and we are just going to be using these 2 lengths of accent color to bind our tassel twice. We're going to be doing that at about 1/3 and 2/3 of the way. Generally speaking, I find that this works best if I can weigh the tassel down with something, and I did not bring anything with me today, often a mug of tea or actually I do have my cell phone. So here we go, putting my cell phone down here to weigh the tassel down so that it's easier to work with. I am going to take my first accent yarn length and we're going to put it down, and I'm going to leave a bunch of this longer so that I have an end to tie with. And then I am going to wrap this second longer side around the tassel a whole bunch of times. So we would like to have a nice, and here I'm going to pay more attention to being nice and tidy. So I want that on, this will be the back side, although we can decide later which side is going to be the back side, but one of these will be slightly tidier than the other because you do have to crisscross at least a little bit as you do this. At least the way I do it. All right, so I've got a nice thick section of accent color. So now is the time for me to look. Is this side tidier or is this side tidier? And they're roughly equivalent. So I am not going to make a big deal out of which side I choose, but if you would like to, you can. So now tie a double knot. And I should say that when you're doing this, you do want this to be at least a little bit tight as you bind things, because we are looking to have a nice sort of poofy section between them. So what I do after I double bind, I double knot this, is I will, depending on the tassel and how different the tassel colors are, I will get rid of the ends in different ways, but if possible, what I will do is I will tug it, I will go through and under the layers, and the first thing that I'm going to look for is just to pull the knots so hard that they disappear inside. On the second pass, I try to split the yarn, or split the plies with the needle as I go through it, which really helps trap those ends. And depending on how paranoid you are about your gnome tassel, you can do things like use something along the lines of Stitch Fix or another kind of glue to just drop a bit of glue on that double knot so that if you want to cut it and it won't come loose. All right, that's looking good enough for today. Let's get that out. Then we can just trim that end really close. All right, now we're going to do the same, but on the lower portion of the tassel. Now remember, we sort of designated one side as the wrong side, so make sure with the second that you like the way that looks. But this is for gnomes, and if it's a bit dodgy, it's not the worst thing in the world, is it? All right, a nice snug double knot. Go through and make sure that those knots are pulled under and tidied away, and then just do something to secure it. My gnome is not going to be a toy, so I will not be too worried about whether or not this is so robustly hidden that it could withstand hours of very enthusiastic play. So I'm not going to overfuss this. So we have our top section with the yarn up here attached for later. Then we've got our first bound section, our second bound section. And before we go much further, I'm just going to kind of push this downwards a bit to kind of give some room for this to plump up, and then I'm just going to play around with this a little bit. Sometimes pushing this upwards is what you need. Sometimes you need to actually kind of pull on this to kind of make it long enough that there is something to kind of plump up there. And then once we have sort of a bit of a bobbly roundness there, then I'm going to trim the ends of the tassel, cut this all so there's no more loops. How are we doing? There's one right there. All right, and now you can see this isn't looking great. And so we would just, depending on how frazzly we want this, we could trim it up or make it very tidy. Because this is originally for a mystery gnome. Oh, there's another loop. Because this is originally for a mystery gnome, since you don't know yet what this is for, if you wanted to leave it at this state and then trim it or not later, that is up to you. That might be something you want to wait with. And this is what we've made, a twice bound tassel.